Maya Lawson wasn't the kind of girl the world noticed. She was a waitress, a hard-working one, a quiet one, the type who made sure everyone else was okay before she ever thought of herself. Her mother worked 2 jobs, barely sleeping, and had raised Maya alone after her father passed away. They had one rule in their tiny home: we lift others, even when it costs us. But that rule, today, would cost Maya more than she could imagine. Maya had prepared for her interview for 6 months. Her dream position, junior analyst at the prestigious Hawthorne Holdings. A chance to escape minimum wage, a chance to finally make her mother proud, a chance to rewrite her future. She wore the only suit she owned, a thrift store blazer 3 sizes too big, and borrowed shoes from her cousin that pinched her toes with every step. But she didn't care. Today was the day. Until the snowstorm hit. Buses were late, taxis were full, and still Maya ran, heart pounding, breath fogging the air, hair soaked beneath the hood of her cheap coat. She was only 4 blocks away when she saw him. He looked fragile, bent over, shivering uncontrollably, white hair crusted with snow, as if the weather was swallowing him whole. People walked past him like he was invisible, but not Maya. Her mother's voice echoed in her head. If someone falls, you pick them up, even if no one sees you do it. So Maya stopped running toward her future and ran toward him instead. "Sir, are you all right?" The man tried to answer, but his lips were blue. His legs buckled beneath him. Maya dropped her purse, letting its contents scatter across the snow as she caught him under his arms. "Please," he whispered, voice thin as paper. "Just a warm place." The interview time flashed on her phone. 9:42 a.m. If she left now, she could still make it. If she didn't, everything was gone. She looked at the man trembling in her arms. Maya made her choice. She dragged the old man into Flint's diner, her workplace. The morning staff looked up in surprise as she hauled him inside. "Maya?" her coworker Jenna asked. "Who's that?" "I don't know," she gasped, "but he needs warmth." They set him in a booth. Maya grabbed blankets, hot tea, and her own scarf. She wrapped him carefully, rubbing warmth into his hands. The color slowly returned to his cheeks, and the tightness in his shoulders eased. He opened his eyes fully for the first time, studying Maya as though trying to place her. "You gave up something to help me, didn't you?" he murmured. Maya swallowed. She didn't want her act of kindness to feel transactional, so she just smiled and said, "I was just passing by." But he watched her, too closely, as though he could see right through the lie. When he was finally stable, Maya slipped outside to check her phone. 10:17 a.m. One new message. Her heart dropped into her stomach. "We regret to inform you." Her hand trembled so violently she nearly dropped the device. Months of preparation, hours of prayer, her one real chance, gone. Because she'd stopped. Because she'd helped. Because she'd done the right thing. A tear slid down her cheek. She wiped it away before anyone could see. Back inside, the old man was sitting straighter. His breathing was no longer ragged. The blank confusion from earlier was gone. Something had shifted. "Maya, that is your name, isn't it?" She nodded, surprised. She hadn't introduced herself. He tapped a table on the finger. "How long have you worked here?" "About 2 years." "And before that?" "Just school and taking care of my mom." He nodded thoughtfully, a glint in his eyes as though he were quietly assessing her. "You think you lost something today? Something important?" Maya's throat tightened. She didn't answer. She didn't need to. He leaned in slightly, lowering his voice. "Tell me, do you believe life ever repays kindness?" She hesitated, whispering, "I'd like to believe it does." The man smiled, a small, knowing smile. "Good," he said, "because today, young lady, Someone important watched you choose compassion over ambition. Maya blinked. Someone important? His smile widened. I think you'll find out soon enough. Before Maya could ask what he meant, the diner door opened with a gust of cold wind. A man in a black coat entered, tall, stern, clearly searching for someone. His eyes landed on the old man in the booth. There you are, sir. We've been looking everywhere. The board meeting has been delayed. Mr. Hawthorne, you should not be outside alone. Maya froze. Mr. Hawthorne? As in Hawthorne Holdings? The billion-dollar empire? The company she had interviewed for? The old man slowly turned to her and winked. Surprise. Maya's breath left her body. Her entire world tilted, and before she could even speak, the old man, the billionaire CEO, stood, extended his hand, and said, Maya Lawson, I believe we need to have a very important conversation.
Maya stood frozen. Her heartbeat thundered in her ears as the old man, now revealed to be Henry Hawthorne, billionaire CEO of Hawthorne Holdings, held out his hand to her like she was someone important, someone who mattered. She wiped her palms on her apron before taking his hand. It felt surreal. 1 minute she was dragging a shivering stranger through a snowstorm, and now she stood face to face with the man whose company she had dreamed of working for. He looked at her with surprising warmth. "Walk with me?" he asked. Maya hesitated. Her coworker Jenna nudged her. "Girl, if a billionaire CEO tells you to walk, you walk!" Maya managed a nervous nod. Henry stepped outside first. His assistant struggled to hold an umbrella over him, muttering about the weather and the delayed board meeting. But Henry stopped. "No umbrella," he said firmly. "Let the snow fall." His assistant blinked in shock, but obeyed. Maya followed him out into the soft snowfall, her breath fogging the air. The world felt muted and heavy, as though the universe itself was holding its breath. Henry clasped his hands behind his back. "Tell me, Maya, why did you stop for me today? Everyone else walked right past." She shrugged softly. "You looked like you needed help. That simple?" "It didn't feel like a choice," she admitted. "It felt like responsibility." Henry chuckled. It was a warm, fatherly sound. "My dear, in a world like ours, choosing kindness is a choice, a rare one." They walked slowly down the sidewalk. Then Henry's expression shifted, sobering, sharpening. "Do you know where I was headed this morning?" "No, sir." "To the hospital," he said quietly, "for a test, a serious one." Maya's heart twisted. He continued, "I've been feeling weak for weeks. My doctors warned me, my board warned me, but I didn't listen. I insisted on walking alone to clear my head." He shook his head at himself. "Stubborn old men never learn." Maya's eyes softened. "You're not stubborn, sir. You were just overwhelmed." Henry stopped walking, and the weight in his eyes changed. "Maya, if you had not stopped for me, I would have collapsed. In that storm, with no one around." Her breath caught. "You saved my life?" The words hit her like a wave, and she shook her head quickly. "No, sir, I mean it," Henry said, "and I repay my debts." That statement stunned her into silence. For a moment, they simply stood there in the snowfall. Then Henry asked the question that made Maya's stomach drop. "Why were you running this morning? Where were you going?" She swallowed hard. She didn't want to tell him. Didn't want pity. Didn't want to seem like she was trying to use him. But Henry Hawthorne wasn't a man who accepted silence. Maya, he said softly. "I can't repay a debt if I don't know what was lost." She took a breath. I had an interview today," she whispered, "at your company." Henry blinked. "My company?" "Yes, sir. Hawthorne Holdings, junior analyst position." He stared at her for a long moment. "How long have you prepared for this interview?" "Half a year." "And you missed it because you stopped for me." She nodded slowly, eyes lowering. Henry exhaled and muttered, "My God, the universe has a sense of humor." They returned to the diner steps. Snow clung to Henry's coat, melting into tiny droplets. "Listen carefully, Maya Lawson," Henry said, his voice suddenly carrying the command of a man used to having rooms fall silent for him. "I want you to come to my office tomorrow morning." Maya blinked. "For what?" "For your interview." She almost dropped her breath. "My interview? But, sir, I already—" "Yes," he interrupted gently. "You missed the formal one. But I am the CEO. If I say there will be another interview, there will be." She stared at him wide-eyed. "And Maya," he paused, studying her expression closely, "the position is not yours because you helped me. That would be charity, and charity insults talent. You will earn it with your mind." She nodded slowly. "But," he added with a smile, "I already know your character, and character is something money cannot buy." Her eyes blurred with tears. "Thank you, Mr. Hawthorne." He put a hand on her shoulder gently. "Call me Henry." Just then, Henry's assistant rushed toward them. "Sir, the board is waiting. They're furious. They told me to get you immediately." Henry sighed. "They'll be even more furious when they learn what I'm about to do tomorrow." The assistant blinked. "Sir?" Henry didn't answer. Instead, he turned back to Maya. "Tomorrow, 8 a.m. Don't be late." She nodded. He walked toward the waiting black SUV. But just before getting inside, he turned back one last time. "Oh, and Maya?" "Yes, sir?" His eyes glinted. "There is something you should know before tomorrow." She frowned. "What is it?" Henry raised a single finger. "My disappearance this morning has already caused chaos inside the company." "Chaos?" she whispered. "Yes, and some people," his voice dropped low, almost ominous, "would do anything to make sure I never returned." Maya's heart lurched. Why would anyone want that? Henry stepped into the SUV, but gave her one final, unsettling answer. "Because, Maya, there is someone inside that building who wants the CEO position, and they were counting on me not surviving the storm." The door closed. The SUV drove off. And Maya, standing in the falling snow, realized one terrifying truth. She hadn't just saved an old man, she had stepped into a war she didn't understand.
When kindness opens a door, sometimes the thing waiting inside is far bigger than you imagined. But a single honest pair of eyes can change the course of an empire. Maya still had snowflakes clinging to her coat when Henry Hawthorne led her through the warm glow of the company lobby. He treated her like an invited guest, not an intruder, and she felt both terrified and strangely buoyed by his simple courtesy. "Don't be nervous," Henry murmured as they entered the glassed conference room. "Just tell the truth." They didn't sit long before Henry's assistant arrived with a manila envelope. Henry set it on the table and nudged it toward Maya. "Take a look," he said. Maya's fingers trembled as she lifted the top page. The packet was a restructuring proposal, the very thing she'd been told about in hushed rumors when she first dreamed of Hawthorne Holdings. Numbers marched in neat columns, projections, reductions, a final signature line. She read like she'd read the menu 1,000 times, but this was different.
Her accounting instinct, trained in night classes and late nights balancing rent and change, sparked. A column of expenses repeated. A projected loss had a misplaced decimal. A line labeled contingency payout appeared twice, hidden under 2 different codes. In the margins, a signature looked hurried, then smudged, then copied. Maya's pulse tightened. This wasn't a simple mistake. It looked intentional. She felt heat rise to her face. "Sir," she said softly, looking at Henry, "these numbers don't match the supporting sheets. This loss is manufactured. Whoever wrote this is hiding money. Someone is trying to make the company appear bankrupt." A silence fell so deep the ceiling fan seemed loud. Henry's jaw tightened. He lifted the folder and for the first time looked not like a patron, but a man who wanted the truth. "Who altered these?" he asked, voice steady but small. Before Maya could answer, a heavy-set man in a dark suit entered, Daniel Ward, the COO. He'd been friendly in passing, efficient in meetings. Today his smile looked thin. He walked to the head of the table with a confidence that dated back to boardrooms where power decided right and wrong. "You're out of line, Mr. Hawthorne," Daniel said smoothly. "We prepared this in consultation with legal and finance. We were ready to move forward." Henry didn't flinch. "Then you won't mind if we take a closer look." Maya pointed at the duplicated line items and the copied signature. Heads bent, murmurs swelled. Daniel's face, at first controlled, flickered, just slightly when he saw the pages. "You can't make this accusation based on—" He cut himself off, because the room now had auditors on the phone and a pale-faced finance director clicking through spreadsheets. The audit confirmed what Maya had seen. Figures altered, contingency funds duplicated, and a signature traced to a number registered to an assistant who reported directly to Daniel. In the sudden hush, a board member muttered, "This is an inside job." Daniel's composure cracked. He lunged for the folder, voice rising, calling Maya reckless, calling Henry paranoid. He instructed security to remove her if necessary. Henry slammed his palm on the table. "No," he said, quiet but absolute. "This woman has integrity. She saved my life yesterday. She will not be bullied from this room." The boardroom split, the cold faction that wanted Henry out, and the stunned majority now forced to listen. Cameras in the hallway had already picked up enough to create a public buzz. The story of the CEO saved by a stranger was beginning to leak, and with it, the smell of rotten accounting. Daniel tried to spin it, blame the assistant, blame a crooked contractor, but the audit files told a clearer story. The duplicated contingency funds traced back to an account used to pay outside consulting firms that listed Daniel as a client liaison. Security moved in as tempers flared. Daniel, pressed and furious, barked orders. He tried to turn the room away from the ledger and toward Henry's fitness, toward the idea that a CEO was unstable and therefore unfit. Henry looked at Maya, and what he read in his tired eyes was simple. If people inside your house want you gone, you don't survive by hiding. You survive by showing the truth. "Document everything," Henry said. "Call the independent counsel, and—" he swallowed. "Place Daniel on administrative leave pending investigation." The gavel of consequence landed. Daniel's face went white as security quietly led him toward the elevator. Maya sagged into a chair, suddenly spent. She had not sought this. She had only followed a rule taught to her in a tiny kitchen. Help the person in front of you. As the room emptied into urgent side conversations and phone calls, Henry reached across the table and squeezed her hand. "You did more than stop me from being harmed. You stopped them from stealing our company. I owe you more than I can say." She smiled, tired, astonished, and speechless, until a security officer's voice cut into the moment. "Sir, there's been an anonymous call. Someone said this exposure is only step one. They threatened additional attacks on your servers and board. They used the phrase, 'finish the job.'" Henry's face went still. "Then we have to protect what remains." Maya, who had never imagined herself entangled in corporate warfare, realized that the kindness that had cost her an interview had now put her at the center of a battle far larger than she ever wanted.
When truth exposes thieves, the thieves show their true faces. Justice, however, rarely arrives without a cost.
By lunchtime, the building buzzed with a different sound. Reporters, auditors, and a staff relieved to see action. The board convened an emergency session, and Henry insisted Maya attend. He would not let the woman who saved him be treated like a witness. She would be part of the reckoning. Daniel Ward demanded a formal hearing. He denied everything, then tried to call witnesses, then attempted to sideline the auditor. Each motion fell flat as forensic accountants traced wire transfers and showed the duplicated contingency funneling to accounts set up by a shell consultancy connected to Daniel's private firm. The shocking thing wasn't only the fraud. It was the motive. Daniel had been moving money to create a fake loss, to justify a forced restructuring, one that would allow the board to call an emergency vote to replace Henry with a caretaker CEO more sympathetic to Daniel's plans. It was a slow coup made legal through falsified numbers. Board members who had once whispered about Henry's growing weakness now found themselves defending their own oversight. Some, embarrassed and chastened, demanded restitution. Others looked around the polished table for scapegoats. In a dramatic vote, held in the glass-walled boardroom and relayed by Henry's insistence to the audit committee and legal counsel, Daniel was placed on administrative leave pending criminal investigation. The police were called. Daniel left in cuffs, his protests swallowed by the clamor of clicking phones. Outside, the first headlines hit. Hawthorne scandal, inside job exposed, COO removed. The public reaction was immediate. Shock and, oddly, admiration for a CEO who would listen to a stranger. Henry, exhausted, turned to Maya as they stood alone briefly in the now quiet hallway. He offered her a small envelope. Inside, an invitation. Work at his foundation, a chance at mentorship, a paid training program, and the formal interview she'd missed, but more real than any she could have imagined. "You earned it," he said softly. Maya's gratitude poured out in a single honest sentence. "I only did what I could." He shook his head. "You did what no one else did. The world needs more of that." But as they held what seemed to be a moment of hard-won triumph, the screen of a nearby security terminal blinked to life. A recorded voicemail had been intercepted by the IT team earlier that morning. Henry watched it replay. A disguised voice, mechanical and calm, declaring coldly, "Step 1 is complete. Step 2 begins at midnight." Henry's smile vanished. "This wasn't just Daniel," he said, voice stripped of warmth. "This is organized. Someone wanted my chair, and they hired an inside man and outside help to make it happen." Maya swallowed. Who would go this far?" Henry's gaze drifted to the skyline as if the city itself might answer. "Someone with a lot to gain. Someone patient enough to orchestrate a house to burn slowly. We exposed Daniel, but that doesn't mean the men who hired him are finished." That night, the company ramped defenses. Servers were isolated, key personnel moved, private investigators called in. Cameras scanned corridors. Henry's office had a 24-hour watch. Maya, offered a temporary role in the foundation's bookkeeping and outreach, accepted, partly for the pay, partly because she now felt responsible for more than her own future. In the quiet of the security hub, a technician turned to Henry and murmured, "We traced some of the initial consultancy payments overseas. They lead to accounts that dissolve and reappear under different names, but there's one pattern. Every trail ends at a single private trust we can't yet access." "A trust?" Henry breathed. "Whose?" The computer screen showed a name that was little more than a code, Harrogate. Henry felt a coldness travel up his spine. He did not recognize the name outright, but in the world he had inhabited for decades, where influence hid behind philanthropic fronts and shell entities, Harrogate meant strings. It meant an invisible hand. "We'll find them," he said, though he wasn't sure he believed it. "We have to find them." Maya, looking over his shoulder at the cryptic line, felt a chill of her own. She hadn't asked for this career. She hadn't asked to stand between a billionaire and shadowy forces, but the woman who'd given her scarf away in a blizzard had lit a path that led her straight into a war. Outside, the lights of the city blinked on, unaware of the chessboard being reset below. And from a hidden server room across the ocean, a disguised line opened and a new message began typing itself into a secure channel. They exposed the mole. They think they won. Prepare step 2. Maya read the headlines on her phone, gripped Henry's offer in her hand, and realized justice had been served today. But the storm she stepped into was far from over.